Welcome to the program, everyone. My name is Jeff. Here it is over in the corner. There we go. I wanted to make a video tonight about no promotions, none of that. I just wanted to talk about the thing that's going around from James OKeefe, who I really like what he does, everything that's going on with Ethereum, and all the different news and different coverages. I've watched a lot of videos, a lot of different coverage out there, and I feel like there's some dots that haven't been connected and some pieces that are missing. So, having been in the crypto space for a long time and done a lot of history and a lot of educating myself about all the history of crypto and all how things have come together and all the things I've learned from different videos, and I will put those references in the description. Thank you to all those videos that have been made out there. Great job by everyone. But I wanted to put some things together, and I want to talk about three things regarding this Ethereum, what James OKeefe has uncovered, and I think he's done a great job with it. I want to talk about three main things. First off, the history of Ethereum. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it is relevant to what he's discovered. Second, I'm going to talk about something I like to do, which is follow the money and see how those dots connect. And then the third, I'm going to talk about the SEC connections that I've discovered, how they all piece together. We're going to put all three of those things together, see how this flows. I'm going to try and make sure that I get all of my notes mentioned here because I got a lot of them. I've been spending all night putting this together, but let's jump right into it. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so first off, this is the post we're talking about. James OKeefe talked about the exposing the crypto mafia. And here's the post and the video. I'm not going to read all that. You can go and find it. I'll put that in the tweets. It's starting to play down there. No audio, but the first thing I froze on was he mentioned Steve Narioff, who wasn't a part of the founders, which I'll talk about. Well, let's show the picture right now. Here's the 8 founders of Ethereum. Now, I'm not going to dive into each one of them, but I'm going to talk about Vitalik up here on the top left, Vitalik Buterin, Charles Hoskinson, and Gavin Wood. Those are 2 prominent names here. But the one I'm going to mention the most is Joseph Lubin. I'll talk about him the most, and we'll get to him in a moment. But let's see. So let's go to so in this part of the video, I'm not going to play it right now. Well, let me try and play a little bit of it. Let's see if I can get the audio to come through.
It was around this time that a man named Joe Lubin, the chief operations officer for Ethereum, had a call with Steven Narioff where he was talking about how with cryptocurrencies, there isn't a trail.
Yeah, careful what you put in your emails because those, you don't know who's going to be keeping those, and you don't know.
Exactly. And again, as we've discussed, there's a tension between running an open, transparent organization and protecting ourselves. And so maybe we agree to be open and transparent, except for everything from 90 days ago and past, because it's all gone. It's sort of like the way cryptocurrencies work. You can, there isn't a trail if you don't want there to be.
So I'm going to pause it there. Let me drop out and let me just talk about that for a moment. So first off, okay, the time frame of that video and that recording, which is documented what James did, and it's documented in other videos as well, is 2014. Now, going back to those 8 individuals, and in 2014, the timeline of Ethereum, a little bit of history here. The 8 gentlemen that we were talking about, all the different founders, from Gavin Wood to Charles Hoskinson to I always get Joe's name, Joe Lubin, and a few others that are all involved here. They hadn't physically met yet until 2014. When they met in 2014, I think it was June, they were trying to figure out how to organize the company. And there were 2 different schools of thought. Charles wanted to take it like, hey, we've done a lot of work here. We want to get some venture capital. And we want to go public, and we just get. And we want to get venture capital behind us. Like, we don't want to go into a crowdsourcing we want to be for profit. The other teams like Gavin and others wanted to go for a nonprofit structure and do a crowdsourcing, do an ICO or just a fundraiser, crowdsource the funds and sell shares of Ethereum. Before they were called ICOs, but the initial coin offerings. That's what they chose to do. Vitalik made the decision in June, and then Charles and one of the other founders were fired in 2014. That was basically the schism of the division of all the 8 guys. Most of them left from 2014 to 2016, except for Vitalik. Okay, so that was the first thing. Now, going back to that recording that I mentioned here, and I'll share my screen one more time. So this recording, this is Steve. Let me get his name right. Steve Narioff talking to Joe Lubin about 90 days of history. Now, this is going to come up more about the history is important to these guys, and it's important things. So they were trying to decide how to structure this company and how much of history they're going to keep. Now, these guys here, and it seemed like Joe was on the same page, was like they only wanted to keep 90 days of history. Now, Bitcoin, the frame of the framework of Bitcoin is it's immutable. That means that you can't change it. You can't change its history. You can't erase things that have happened in the past. You have to go all the way back to what they call the Genesis block, the very first block of the blockchain. You can trace it all the way back, no matter how. You can do that today, all the way back to 2009, the very first block. You can go all through the history of the entire blockchain. Nothing is erased. That's important. That's going to come up in another moment here. But let me share my screen and start diving into something else that has happened in the history of Ethereum that people may not know about. Okay, this was from 2016. Okay, this is the Ethereum Classic story. This is the hard fork. Ethereum Classic. Let me explain what happened here. In 2016, Ethereum Classic was launched. They didn't plan for this, but they kind of did it anyway because they kind of had to, because there was a division of the teams of what to do when something happened. So here's what happened. Ethereum Classic forked from Ethereum in response to a major hacking incident, a rare but not impossible occurrence for crypto blockchains. The hack resulted in 3.6 million Ethereum tokens being lost. Okay. Now, if you had an immutable or unchangeable blockchain, you can't, it is what it is. You got to move on. What Ethereum chose to do, the main Ethereum blockchain responded by updating the blockchain. That means they changed it. Okay. They updated the blockchain. They actually reverted back in time to before the bug and all those tokens were lost and restarted. Okay. They said, it's not a great description in this article, but they responded by updating the blockchain to remove the incorrect transactions. That means they erased some of the blocks that happened and moved back in time, kind of like a checkpoint or like a restore point for a computer. Like we'll go back 3 days and then it'll be fine. We'll go back to that. So everything that people did, they call it a do-over. They basically just they get rid of stuff. So there were many in the original Ethereum community that disagreed with that approach, which led to the fork. So that's when Ethereum Classic was launched. It was not a planned launch, but it still exists today. And that's important to note because, this is showing a pattern. We're going to get to that a little bit more. So next video here, I want to talk about that they were kind of rushed to launch. Okay, this is a video that's this is from Coincaster on Twitter. Let's see if I can get the audio to work. You're going to hear that like when they launched and when they went public, it really wasn't ready. So it was Ethereum 1.0. So here's that video. It's only about a minute long. Let's hear it out.
A higher, more conceptual level, Ethereum 1 you could think of as a prototype. It was an impossible project that got built, and we needed to put out something that we knew wouldn't be scalable. We needed to do that to figure out how to build decentralized applications, figure out the developer tooling and the infrastructure that we needed to build them and deploy them. We needed to figure out whether it's possible to build companies around decentralized applications, because a number of years ago, people just thought, no, it's all code out in the open. The margins would go down to zero. There'd be people copying everybody back and forth. And of course, that's not true because there's so much to building a product and a service in a company outside of the actual pure technology. We needed to build a trust foundation and figure out what we could build on top of that. Turns out we can build a financial
you're
plumbing
saying
layer.
That the concept of launching something that doesn't scale and then rebuilding
Sure.
it as
It
something
scales-
scalable
it
was
scales
in the
somewhat.
initial plans or initial
Yeah, we
thinking.
knew it wasn't going to be scalable for sure.
So let me drop out of here for a moment. All right. So first off, that's Vitalik Buterin and Joe Lubin speaking. I don't know who the third gentleman is. I don't know what show this was, but they're basically saying that Ethereum wasn't ready. All right. Now, I've talked to a lot of people. I've been involved in the software launches. Typically, you launch a software and you know that there's going to be bugs and there's going to be feedback to the community. And hopefully they are just minor bugs and you've caught all the major ones and you can move forward. And yes, there'll be updates and upgrades, but they launched a product that they knew it wasn't scalable. They knew it couldn't support things. It wasn't ready, but they launched it because they wanted to get that ICO and they wanted to get that crowdfunding. Now, that's my opinion. All right. Obviously, I'm reading between the lines here, but you hear Joe Lubin and Vitalik sitting there, two of the 8 founders that persisted. This is clearly post 2014 and what I call the schism, the division of the 8 guys. And at some point after that. So I'm going to guess about 2016, 27, maybe 2015 to 2017 is my guess on when that video was made. I'm not certain, but that basically said that, hey, they deployed it and they knew it wasn't going to be ready. So like that kind of led to the Ethereum fork, in my opinion, of Ethereum Classic. And then that we got to do a fork and we got to revert the blockchain. So let me continue the story, getting back to what that's important. It's going to show a pattern of history here of how they approach this project and why I really haven't liked this project. I'll be that. If you look at my videos in the past, I have not been a supporter of Ethereum for forever. And this is part of the reason why. So here we go. Let's go right back into it. Okay, so getting back to the team here. Here we have all 8 players again. Vitalik, Charles, Gavin, and Joe. Okay, now those are the 4 main players. The other 4 guys clearly involved as well. We're not going to get into them. Don't need to for right now. We're going to go back to 2014 again. Now, the project that they're debating, it's June 2014. They're trying to decide how they're going to launch and how to fund the project. So going back to, they decided to go nonprofit with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. That name will come up shortly. But back to James O'Keefe's video, okay, at about 8 minutes in, where he mentions that Joe Lubin is writing the terms and conditions for the purchase agreement. Now, this is going to be like for the initial coin offering, the public, the crowdfunding. Like they decided they're going to go and raise money for the project from people. They're going to offer tokens of Ethereum to go and buy them. So Joe has written the initial draft of the terms and conditions and the purchase agreement that buyers will have to read and accept. And he shared this internally with Jeffrey Alberts. Now, who's Jeffrey Alberts? Let's see. Let's go to the next one. The next video, a few seconds later in this video, we have a response back from Jeffrey Alberts. That name will come up again shortly. That says that, that some of this language should be changed. Now, Jeffrey Alberts, that we're going to tie him in a little bit, but I wanted to point out that Jeffrey Alberts is involved in the discussion of how to launch this project, what are the terms and conditions. And then there's also comments in here. Joe Lubin is trying to get as many tokens as possible, which is kind of reflected in point number 3, where he's the attorney, Jeffrey, says, change the phrase concerning speculative investment being discouraged to being not permitted. So that basically means you can't, like, how much you want to buy. We'll get back to that in a moment. So here's how they're tied together. So here's the first things that tying people together here. And this is from Mr. Huber, who puts a lot of this together very well on Twitter. Jeffrey Alberts was the lawyer for Frye Cashman, who helped with Ethereum ECO for Lubin in 2014. He also worked as an assistant attorney at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York until 2013. That's also been an area of like that the anti-crypto general part of the country. New York is considered the worst state in the union for cryptocurrency, but that's beside the point. But the point is, Jeffrey Alberts, he worked for, he actually worked, let's see, then SEC New York Regional Director, later SEC Enforcement Director, and now Simpson Thacher partner. Simpson Thacher will come up later as well. Mark Berger, he worked for Mark Berger. He worked with Mark Berger on this, and Mark Berger is the attorney who filed the lawsuit against Ripple. So now we have a connection between Jeffrey Alberts, who helped with the ICO. Here's the letter between him and Joe Lubin, and later he worked with Mark Berger. So tie your own strings together here. Like, did Mark Berger learn about this? Is this part of how he learned about Ripple? How he learned about how there's a competing project to Ripple? I don't know, but this is something that ties things together. So after this happens, now it's 2014, the ICO is happening. we have the great divide here. Now people are leaving Ethereum, and Mr. Lubin, Joseph Lubin, decides to leave and start a company called Consensus. He becomes the founder. He says January 2014. I think he actually did it later than that. Well, he co-founded Ethereum, I'm sorry. But then I don't know when he went to Consensus, I don't know the exact date. But he went on from Ethereum to move on to Consensus. Now, Consensus is going to be mentioned shortly, so save that moment. Now, let's go on to one other part of the conversation, which is the big part, which is this is a gentleman by the name of Bill Hinman. Now, Bill Hinman was the SEC chair in 2018. Okay, so Bill Hinman had a very famous speech in 2018 that both XRP and Ethereum debate about, which is his speech in June of 2018. There was a lot of back and forth about it. Okay, and there was a lot of discussion. Let's get these pop-ups out of here. Okay, so a U.S. SEC official wanted to say that the agency did not. So his speech was his own opinion at the time, but he said we. So it kind of reflected the whole SEC. So there was a lot of discussion back and forth. There's a lot of emails, and they were released a few months ago about what is happening, and it's much has come to light about these emails that have come back. So as this was released, let's see what the date is. This is June of 2023. So the emails came out last June. A number of emails tied the one-time director of corporation finance, Will Hinman's 2018 speech, saying Ether did not look like a security, were published Tuesday by Ripple in its ongoing defense against an SEC lawsuit. So the SEC is getting sued. I'm sorry, Ripple is getting sued by the SEC, alleging the company illegally sold XRP tokens as an unregistered security for over 7 years. The emails were published alongside an updated motion for summary judgment. Now, this is very interesting that this is mentioned, because if you dig into the story a little bit further, I know I highlighted this. There we go. So a gentleman by the name of Brian Frye, who's the Spears Gilbert Professor of Law at the University of Kentucky, he was quoted as saying the best reason against classifying Ethereum as a security is that Ethereum looks more like Bitcoin than any other token. He added that the SEC has repeatedly said it considers Bitcoin a commodity rather than as a security, primarily because of the lack of centralized control. So, okay, let's drop out of here, and let's talk about this for just a moment here before we get into part 3. So we've talked about the history. We've talked about the history of Ethereum. The team came together, how they had an ICO in 2014, how the teams kind of split up after that. There was much debate, and James is on to a lot of things, but there's a lot of history there that needs to be talked about the history of founding Ethereum, how it got funded, how they had an ICO, how there was debate about how they were going to structure the company. Lots of the founders left. And then one founder went off to start Consensus. And then you get to 2018. And then all of a sudden, Bill Hinman is saying, hey, you know what? Ethereum looks good. But the question is, there's a real question that has not been answered yet. And that is the Ethereum of 2018 the same as the Ethereum of today? And now I want to talk about that, because now we're back to history again. So now, what happens with Ethereum in 2022? All right, Ethereum changes to proof of stake instead of proof of work. Now, that's an important distinction. And then we talk about that real briefly. That won't go to too many details here, but Bitcoin is proof of work. They have machines, miners that run to support the network, and they get rewarded with Bitcoin every so often. It's a little random, but it's kind of distributed out, and that they are working for that Bitcoin. That is proof of work. Bitcoin has always been that way. Ethereum in 2018 and prior to that was also proof of work. There were miners, there were computers that ran same kind of style, not same code, but same style. They worked to get more Ethereum. In 2022, Ethereum switched from proof of work to proof of stake. So what that means is the comments made in 2018 that were made, and I don't know when the other comments were made that Ethereum was most like, the Ethereum project was the coin that was most like Bitcoin. I don't think that holds true. And I don't know when he made that statement, or if he did not know about the change when he made that statement. But today, Ethereum is nothing like Bitcoin, because it's proof of stake versus proof of work. And not to get in the technicals, but the analogy I'll give you is this. Okay. The internet can be considered, think of the internet as proof of work. You can have more websites pop up every single day. The internet doesn't care. Every website's involved in the internet. It does, like the same thing with the miners. Like the network doesn't care. The Bitcoin network, you'd add miners all the time. That's great. Proof of stake is kind of like owning a franchise. You can if there's only allowed to be so many franchises, you have to the proof of stake is different because it's a different level of involvement with the network, and you don't get rewarded. You get rewarded based on how much you have versus how many coins you have versus like how much work you're putting in. It's not quite the same. It's not a great analogy, but it's completely different structure of how the stake. You get rewards for having a stake versus you're actually doing work with a miner. Completely different network structure, completely different style. So the point is that any statements made prior about how Ethereum is classified or how it's constructed prior to 2022 are completely irrelevant from 22 forward, because now it's completely changed its style of network. So now let me share my screen and we'll talk about the last part of this and we'll tie all this together. So Ethereum in 2022 has changed, okay? It's changed to a proof of stake instead of proof of work. Forget the details, it's just different, okay? All right, so 1 year later, how proof of stake has changed Ethereum. This article here, I'll put it, everything will be in the links. So this, the Ethereum replaces proof of work consensus with proof of stake in a highly anticipated upgrade. There's less circulating Ethereum. Go all the way down here. Is Ethereum now more centralized? That's the question. There's a lot of discussion here. I'll jump over to the next link that talks about it. And this is Ethereum saying it's much more centralized than folks realize. And again, this will be in the links. This is October 2023. And if you scroll down here, and I've seen numbers to all different levels, at the Relayer network, we now have 4 entities, 4 companies, 2 in the US, 2 in Europe, that relay 93% of all the blocks on Ethereum. Don't worry about the technicals. Just think about 4 entities. And I've seen numbers from anywhere from 60% to 93%. Only 4 entities control the majority of the network in some capacity. You don't even know what a relay network does or all that. They're like only 4 companies own more than 60% of the traffic. It's not decentralized anymore. Bitcoin is well known because the network is decentralized, doesn't have a leader, doesn't have a centralized network alliance or a speaker like Vitalik Buterin that speaks for the entire network. Bitcoin doesn't have that. So again, Bitcoin and Ethereum are now nothing alike. So now to wrap up the last discussion point here, this is from the same video from James. This is talking about the next step for the Ethereum network, and this is called what they call the Purge. It's an improvement called numbered 4444, and what they're doing is they're getting riddance of anything that's in the network that's a year or more in age. So anything that's older than a year, they're going to purge from the network. Now they're claiming that they're doing this because they're trying to make the network faster. This is a little bit of discussion of the Purge. All right, the Purge is a key stage in the Ethereum transition that involves the removal of old and excess network history and simplifying the network over time. Aside from reducing historical data storage, this stage also significantly lowers the hard disk requirements for node operators and the technical debt of the Ethereum protocol. Again, we're not going to get too much into the details here, but what I just wanted to summarize here as I wrap this up, and I'm going to get into the final point in one moment. But the idea here, again, going back to already when I was earlier in the video, and I said that we're talking about 90 days in the past, as typical cryptos do. That is not typical. Bitcoin, you can go all the way back to the very, very first block, and that's true of Litecoin and most other projects. Most other projects out there, you keep the entire history. Now, the devil's in the details here. For most operations of the network, you don't need to have the whole history of the network. Only those that are validating transactions and looking things up on the history, you need to have access to those records. There's questions on where those histories are going to go. Can you trace things back? Can you look back more than a year? Where's the history going to be kept now if it's not on the blockchain? That's kind of the point of a blockchain. It's a data record. It is a chain of blocks of data. That is the term blockchain. You just chain data blocks together. That's how you make a blockchain. The fact that they're purging it it really has no impact on the network. It's an excuse. They don't need to do this. That they're going to say it's faster. You don't need to do this to make the network faster. You really don't, because only validators need to keep the whole record. And certain aspects of the network, you need to keep the whole record. You can structure a network that you don't get slowed down by its history. That's really not good discussion. But really, I think that as James mentioned in the video, why are you erasing the history unless you have something to hide? So if you go back to the discussion in 2014 about 90 days and older, getting rid of that, to the hard fork because they made a mistake in the code that wasn't ready to launch in the first place, and which resulted in Ethereum Classic. Now they want to get rid of more than a year of history. There's issues here with Ethereum. So one last thing I want to put together just to get all this information out there, and I'm glad you stuck with me to this point. I know it's a lot, and I'm trying to do it in a concise format, but the last thing I want to put out there is how to tie all these things together, okay? And that is the last thing I'm going to share. So here we go. All right, so looking up this is crypto law, and this is, again, one of the videos showed me this, but I'm going to talk about this real quick. So I mentioned William Hinman, Bill Hinman, and Jay Clayton, another leader of the SEC. Those two names, if you follow the SEC and all the regulation with crypto, you'll know those two names. So first, I'm going to talk about Bill Hinman. He's highlighted in purple here. Was a longtime partner at the firm Simpson, Thacher, and Bartlett that was mentioned earlier. The Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which was also mentioned earlier, that's the nonprofit that was created to run Ethereum, is a coalition of companies built to market Ethereum as an enterprise solution, includes Simpson, Thacher, and Bartlett. So there's a tie between Mr. Hinman and Simpson Thacher. And another video that I didn't include here, Bill Hinman was paid $15 million by Simpson Thacher, and he was a member of them for a long time, but they don't know why. So there's a history there, and there's records of Bill being paid $15 million at about the same time that he made that 2018 speech. Excuse me. I'm cracking up about it. Why was he paid $15 million? Now, the other thing to tie in here is Jay Clayton. He's a longtime partner at the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell. Ethereum was launched by the Ethereum Foundation in 2014 as an enterprise blockchain system. An early investor and co-founder was Joe Lubin. In a parallel, Lubin also founded Consensus, which I mentioned earlier, as did James. Consensus is a for-profit consulting firm to promote and profit from building enterprise blockchain solutions exclusively on the Ethereum network. Lubin received 9.5% of Ether as part of creating Consensus. So Consensus ties to Joe Lubin, ties to Ethereum, ties to Jay Clayton. Okay? So I tied it all together. Follow the money. You can see that Joe Lubin, even though they said they weren't going to be a for-profit and they don't want to have any third-party promotions, which there is video out there, like that's one of the criteria for deciding if it's a security or if it's a commodity. If there's a third-party promoter of the project, like a Consensus, then it would not be a security. I'm sorry, it would be a security. It would not be a commodity. So you got to look at all these things. You got to look at the history. You got to look at how everybody split away and just basically scurried away from this project, including Joe Lubin. But he went to a particular direction towards Consensus and became a big promoter of Ethereum because he got paid for 9.5% of the entire Ethereum because he wanted to collect Ethereum tokens in the begin with. So I think that James O'Keefe is onto something. He's only scratched the surface. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. I appreciate you sticking around for all 30 minutes of this, but I try to put as much as I could in here in the least amount of time. So hopefully this is of value to you. So you learn about like the 10 years of the clouded history of Ethereum. Judge for yourself. Follow the links. Look at the videos I put in the description, and I will leave it there. Thank you for watching. Please share this with somebody that needs to see it, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Take care.